Thanks, all of you viewers out there in YouTube land, for tuning in to another adventure of Journeys with Jack. I'm going to speak about Edinburgh today. I have just come back from there. It's October 2025, so fresh in my mind. And let me tell you about it. So we took a direct flight from Newark, New Jersey into Edinburgh, arrived a bit after 8 a.m., cleared customs rapidly, and got out to pick up the public transport into town. So I have to praise Edinburgh Airport for those who are arriving. Works really well upon arrival and you get out quickly, and then you have a choice of riding into the city center via the tram or a bus. We took the bus. It's a little bit cheaper, about 6 to 7 pounds by the bus, about 9+ pounds on the tram. Now, I came back via tram. Why? Well, the bus moved faster at that time of day, and when I was coming back via the tram in the late afternoon, it was quicker going by tram. But exiting Edinburgh Airport is not the easiest thing. It is advisable for you to consider, if you come into Scotland to Edinburgh and you're going to do a trip through the UK, leave somewhere else. The whole security system, etc., is very capricious and disorganized and makes for an unpleasant leaving experience. All right, onward. So, come in via the bus. It has stops along Princes Street, 2 of them right before the Waverley train station, which is kind of a major landmark. So, we stopped at the first Princes Street station, which was near where we were staying at the Premier Inn. Now, I'm going to put out a shout for the Premier Inn. It's a great UK chain of hotels, somewhat like Ramada Inn in the States, but with a much better breakfast. For instance, you get a full Scottish, full English, or full Welsh breakfast. It's all really the same stuff, but it depends on where you're staying. I guess they call it a full Northern Ireland breakfast over there as well. Anyway, excellent accommodations, clean, decent staff, etc. We arrived early in the morning, about 9, I would think, and so you can't really check in until 3:30, but they were kind enough to let us leave our bags in an adjacent room nearby the reception, and we got a couple of complimentary cup of tea, and off we went to see things. So walking straight down Princes Street, while we looked over across the great gulf between Princes Street and the Royal Mile, we looked up at the Edinburgh Castle, and fortunately later on we wound up having a pretty good view of it from our room at the Premier Inn. Now, we walked down to Sir Walter Scott's monument, massive Gothic structure celebrating this great author. He brought us the Waverley novels. Ivanhoe was one of them, and he really celebrated all things Scottish and helped kind of put pride in Scotland back in place in the 1800s. Incidentally, Waverley train station is named for his novels. This is the only instance to my awareness of a train station being named for a novel. So there's a few bridges that cross from Princes Street across the what I call the chasm. It's really maybe a very deep valley or deep gully over to the Royal Mile, and then you can walk up to the Edinburgh Castle on one end. The other end of the Royal Mile is Holyrood Palace. Do a lot of uphill walking in Scotland. Now, to go across the bridge after the Walter Scott Monument, you head towards the National Gallery and then cross the bridge that's nearby the gallery. I would recommend going through the National Gallery. It has some fabulous artwork by Da Vinci, Titian, El Greco, Velázquez, Cézanne, Monet, Pissarro, etc. The notable Scottish artwork is the Monarch of the Glen, which you've probably seen it before. It's on some whiskey bottles and advertisements for Scotland, etc. It's a 12-point buck for those of you deer hunters and deer lovers in the audience. Rather impressive. So, after going through great art gallery, went up to the Royal Mile and went to St. Giles Church, which is where the Scottish reformer John Knox preached. He was the nemesis of Mary Queen of Scots and the founder of Presbyterianism. Also, right in that area along the Royal Mile, one can nip around the corner to see the statue of Greyfriars Bobby. We had a pint at the eponymous pub and then looked at the graveyard where there's a small monument as well. So Greyfriars Bobby was a very loyal dog. Probably have heard the story that for over a decade would sleep on its master's grave who preceded it in death. This was made into a movie by Walt Disney, late 50s. Very delightful film. It even features the firing of the 1 o'clock gun from the Edinburgh Castle. Now, the 1 o'clock gun was initially used to help people set their watch, keep time accurately in the area, and also to help the ships out in the Firth of Forth who were coming to dock at Leith, which is the port for Edinburgh. And so it was very important for them to have an accurate rendering of the time due to the high change of tide there, up to 18 feet in that area. That's a massive tide change. Here in Savannah, Georgia, where I live, a big tide is 10 feet. So that puts it in perspective. Now, to go to Edinburgh Castle, you can book online, and you used to be able to go right up to a ticket booth near a barricade leading across the walkway to the castle. They prefer you to do it online, but there are some people at the barricade that can help you. So unfortunately, the technology was not working quite so well, so they could kind of give us a time but not a ticket. So we went to the pub, had a pint, came back at the appropriate time, and they took us around to an inner ticket office, and everything worked out fine from there. Edinburgh Castle is really, I think, impregnable. I can't imagine anybody scaling up the walls, although apparently there was a small group of Jacobites that did it at one time. But this castle dates back to medieval times, very well preserved. The cannon that booms out the 1 o'clock gunshot is right there on the battlements. They have an excellent military exhibit for eons of Scottish military history. Also very interesting for we Americans. There's a dungeon where many of the American patriots who fought as sailors were imprisoned by the British Crown during the War for Independence. Well, so we had carried on, seen the castle, seen Greyfriars Bobby, seen the church, seen the monuments, and after a while we needed to head on back and rest, and so of course we stopped for a pint at the pub, and then we went to nearby Rose Street, which runs parallel to the Princess Street where the Premier Inn is located. Rose Street has a lot of restaurants, and we chose this excellent Indian curry place. I'm going to put a shout out for the Indian Lounge dating back to 1983. You know it's good if it's been around that long. And they had the hottest, spiciest vindaloo I'd had this side of India. So it was really yummy, delicious. So up early the next day, and we took the tram out to Leith to see the HMS Britannia. That's the Royal Yacht. Now you can buy a tram ticket right there on Princess Street, and you can get a combined tram and bus ticket for £5.50. That's quite a good deal. You can use it all day long and change. The only place it won't get you is to the airport. Special ticket to do that. Anyway, up to Leith, got on the HMS Britannia. Fantastic. The yacht was in the service of the royal family for 45 years. Queen Elizabeth II was particularly fond of it. It was amazing to see the quarters for the admiral. This yacht was always commanded by an admiral, or at the very least a commodore, and then a large contingent of officers seeing their quarters, and also the lounge for the officers, as well as dining facilities. It was amazing. The ratings had their own lounge, i.e. bar, where they could go get a pint after work. The ratings would be analogous to our version of the sailors. So, of course, the royal family had rather interesting and elaborate apartments towards the aft of the boat, and they even had a space where they could put a car on the boat, either a Land Rover or a Rolls Royce, depending on the nature of where they'd be traveling on an official visit. This vessel would log in about 1 million miles a year. It had been used not just for heads of state to come see the royal family when they would dock in their area, but for the royal family to cruise through the Scottish islands on vacation each year. And it had been used in 1986 to evacuate 1,000 civilians from South Yemen during one of the Middle East wars, period. So I was most pleased to see it, and then we came back via the same tram and were fortunate to be able to get off at St. Andrew's Square and then walk over to see the Lord Nelson Monument at the top of the mount. Fascinating there, and also there's a monument somewhat analogous to the columns of the Parthenon for Scottish military. Great climb up to the mount and look out over Edinburgh and for miles beyond. Could even look all the way up to the port of Leith. So subsequently walked back down towards Princess Street and went by the Duke of Wellington Hero of Waterloo Monument and on to the Guildford Arms pub. This became my favorite pub locally there in Edinburgh. Went 3 times. Very lively atmosphere, and then walked on back to Rose Street to have some more Indian curry. The next day we got up and bought another one of those combination tram and bus tickets for £5.50 and rode about 45 minutes out to the town of Roslin. This was very well worth the journey. We went to the Roslin Chapel. That was built between 1446 and 1486 by Sir William St. Clair, who was the 3rd Prince of Orkney and the Baron of Roslin and the surrounding areas. This chapel, I must say, I've never quite seen anything like it. The stonemason work is exemplary. I don't know how else to describe it, but to compare it to the closest thing to me that I visited, which was the Taj Mahal in India. Both of them have intricate stonework. The Taj Mahal is much larger, but the level of skill and artistry in Roslin Chapel surpasses the Taj Mahal. Throughout, there are various allegorical scenes, symbolic scenes, etc. There is a burial place for a Knights Templar who participated in the Crusades. There are angels playing various instruments one would expect, lutes and lyres, but also one is playing the bagpipes. There are 2 main columns near the altar, one very elaborate with vines growing up at the side of it, carved in the stone, of course. There is a rendition of the fallen angel Lucifer, bound, head down, heading to earth, cast out of heaven. There are many different motifs of the Green Man, which was a legendary fertility symbol of rebirth in the springtime, leaves and limbs all around him. Now you might remember Roslin Chapel, those movie fans of you. It was featured in the Da Vinci Code movie starring Tom Hanks. Rather interesting place. So we took the bus back into town and got off at a stop along one of the bridges and walked over to the Royal Mile and then walked down it to see the home of the aforementioned founder of Presbyterianism, John Knox, and then also went in the nearby church to see the grave of Adam Smith, the Scottish economist who wrote The Wealth of Nations. From there we went on to see the Holyrood Palace, which for about 900 years has been utilized by Scottish and English royalty. The cost of admission is £25, a bit steep, but you kind of got to do it if you're going to go there. You don't want to say you didn't go to the palace. And the most interesting part to me were the intrigues about Mary, Queen of Scots. She had private quarters, and her husband, Lord Darnley, had come up along with some co-conspirators through a back stairway, circular stairway, and stabbed to death her private secretary, David Rizzio, who purportedly was having an affair with her. So you can see the area where the man was assassinated. You can see the inner passageway. It's pretty interesting, pretty Gothic, I might mention. And this same David Rizzio is buried in the churchyard with Adam Smith. So, having completed our time at Holyrood Palace, we went back by the Guildford Arms pub, and lo and behold, they were having a sampling of ales from Orkney. I thought it was particularly appropriate since we'd been in the Rosslyn Chapel of the third Prince of Orkney earlier that day. And so thus, back we went to the hotel, on the way having a bit of dinner of doner kebab at a local takeout, and the next day left for Newcastle. Thanks for tuning in. I hope this is helpful to you and gives you some ideas for your journey to Edinburgh. See you on the next trip.